Hello again. Welcome to Lecture 2 in Module 3 entitled Orders Proboscidea, Hyracoidea, and Sirenia. So today we'll be focused on one of my favorite animals, the elephants in order Proboscidea, the hyraxes, like this little guy here in the middle, the order Hyracoidea, and the manatees and the dugongs in order Sirenia. So as always, we'll begin with our trusty phylogenetic tree. So these three orders, the Hyracoidea, the Proboscidea, and the Sirenia, are often grouped together in this larger taxonomic group known as the Paenungulata, or the near ungulates, because it's thought that these three orders arose from an archaic ungulate, a generalized order of land mammals that arose in the early Paleocene, about 65 million years ago, right after the end Cretaceous. And of course, you'll recall from last week that these orders here are all part of the superorder Afrotheria, which is a monophyletic clade of African mammals that includes the aardvarks, the tenrecs and golden moles, the elephant shrews, and our dugongs, manatees, elephants, and rock hyraxes. So even though superficially you may find it hard to fathom that those little hyraxes are the closest extant order to the elephants, but molecular, anatomical, and karyotypic studies have all strengthened support for this phylogenetic affinity, the affinity of all three of these orders that we'll cover now. Today, elephants are represented by just a single family, the Elephantidae, and there are three extant species, including the Asian elephant here on the bottom left. Asian elephants are found south of the Himalayan mountains in India. That's where we're going to find about 60% of the remaining Asian elephants left on planet Earth. They're also distributed in Sri Lanka, Indochina, Indonesia, all the way down into Borneo. And then we have two species of African elephants. They're found south of the Saharan desert. So traditionally, it was thought that these were subspecies of just a singular African species. They are deemed the savanna, or the bush elephant here in the center. They're found in eastern, central, and southern Africa. And then we have the forest elephant here, which is found in western and central Africa. As their common names suggest, the savanna elephant and the forest elephant, they exploit different habitats, as well as have a different geographic distribution. So it was first suggested by Roca in 2015, and I quote, the genetic evidence overwhelmingly indicates that savanna and forest elephants are separate species. And then more recently, we had Palkopulu in 2018, and he did an extensive genomic analysis of all three extant species as well as extinct species. And he confirmed that savanna and forest elephants are indeed separate species, having diverged about 2 million years ago, and there's been no genetic exchange between these two species for about 500,000 years. So here's a quick look at current elephant distributions. We've got the African elephant here on the left, as well as estimated densities, where the darker the color indicates the greater number of elephants per 100 square kilometers. So you can see the largest populations of African elephants exist in Botswana, Zimbabwe, Tanzania. Okay, and then of course the largest densities of the forest elephants are in the Democratic Republic of Congo, Cameroon, and Gabon. On the right here, this is a distribution of Asian elephants. The light pink is the historic distribution. It's quite extensive, and the dark red indicates current distributions, which are clearly greatly reduced and highly fragmented. Here's a screenshot of table 12.1 from your textbook that's going to summarize the differences between the two African species of elephants, the forest and savanna elephant. So savanna elephants are standing at about 4 meters or 12 feet in height at the shoulder, and they're weighing in at 7,000 kilograms, which is over 15,000 pounds. They're more massive than their forest cousins. As the first pregnancy doesn't occur in forest elephants until they're approximately 23 years of age. And then couple that with this longer interval between pregnancies. Forest elephants, their population doubling time is a whopping 60 years. So that's a very, very slow doubling time. And as you'll soon find out, populations of forest elephants are critically endangered. Their populations are declining precipitously. So savanna elephants are also larger than Asian elephants. So here's a savanna elephant here, Asian elephant on the left, African savanna elephant here, Asian here. The African elephants are going to have much larger ears than their Asian cousins. They have larger tusks. Their back is concave behind the shoulder. Let's see. The tip of the trunk of the African elephant has two lips, two lobes of flesh or fingers, whereas the Asian just has the one. Let's see. African and Asian elephants have different occlusal surfaces on their cheek teeth. The pattern of those laminar ridges differs between the two species. They have a different number of nails on their back feet. There are 4 toenails showing on the Asian elephant and only 3 on the African species. And then lastly, Asian elephants are going to have 19 pairs of ribs compared to 20 in African species. So regardless of species or habitat type, all elephants are very closely tied to the availability of water. They need to be near water. They need to drink copious amounts of water. During the wet season, elephants are going to consume primarily grasses and herbaceous vegetation. However, during the dry season, they will eat shrubs and leaves and even tree bark. They're certainly going to go for flowers and fruits when those are available. And it's important to note that elephants have an important role ecologically. They're seed dispersers, and they're also really important in terms of cycling nutrients. moving nutrients around the savanna and the forest. The presence of elephants is going to positively impact plant community diversity because of their role in dispersing seeds and cycling nutrients. That said, elephants can be the source of human-wildlife conflicts, as they can destroy crops in a very short amount of time. One large adult elephant can consume over 300 pounds of vegetation in a single day. And then if you scale that up to a herd moving across farms, it can be devastating, particularly to small subsistence farmers in Africa and Southeast Asia. So I pulled an article from a local newspaper in Dar es Salaam in Tanzania dated April 16th, 2021, just so you get a glimpse into what it's like living alongside elephants. And I quote, "At least 100 elephants have raided 5 villages in Tanzania's southern highlands over the past 2 weeks, destroying over 400 hectares of crops," officials said. The elephants were from the nearby Ruaha National Park and have destroyed farms planted with maize, rice paddies, and round potatoes in 5 villages. As you know from this week's assignment, elephants are clearly social animals capable of communication. So herds are normally made up of about 10 related individuals. Females and their young are led by the grandmother, the matriarch, and they're going to remain in these matrilineal units. The different units, however, they are certainly fluid. Different units made up of related individuals are going to join temporarily, forming these larger herds, these bond groups. And then depending upon the time of year, males can either be solitary or they will form all male groups. Elephants have a very slow life history tempo. Females are going to mature at about 10 years old, but their fecundity won't peak until they're between 25 and 45 years old. Similarly, males are going to become reproductively mature between 10 and 15, but they're not very successful at mating until they're at least around 30. So elephants, like orcas, like humans, they're going to live beyond their reproductive years. And we remember from our last lecture that those female matriarchs, they're repositories of cultural information. Experience has taught those matriarchs where to find resources and when to look for them. This right here, this secretion is called temporin. This is a telltale sign that the bull elephant is in this reproductive period called musth. So that's going to last between 2 and 3 months each year, during which time the male's hormone levels, their sexual activity, and their aggressive behaviors increase dramatically. So testosterone levels in an elephant in musth can be 60 times greater than at other times of the year. So during this time, males can be quite unpredictable and potentially dangerous. Obviously, we need to address the elephant in the room. Elephant size. So as I mentioned, the savanna elephant can be 12 feet tall at the shoulder and weigh in excess of 15,000 pounds, making them the largest living terrestrial mammals. It's a good test question, wouldn't you say? So when you have that much body mass and you live in the tropics or subtropical regions, you have got to thermoregulate. You've got to stay cool. So that's why elephants have evolved wrinkly skin. That wrinkly skin is actually an adaptation to channel and to hold water all across their body surface. And then it's going to evaporate and cool these massive animals. Further, all elephants have large ears, but particularly in the African species. Those ears are massive radiators. So they're incredibly vascularized, and they have this large surface area to volume ratio, which is going to allow the heat to dissipate from their blood and cool these massive animals down in that hot African sun. And we certainly can't move on from elephants until we talk about some of these just bizarre species that have been recovered in the fossil record. So we'll start with the first elephant down here on the bottom left. This is Moratherium. It's this rotund, semi-aquatic mammal with these short little stubby legs that lived 35 to 37 million years ago and weighed only approximately 500 pounds. And then we'll jump over here to Platybelodon. And you'll probably guess why it's called a shovel tusker. So it was originally thought that Platybelodon lived in swamps and was using those tusks and lower jaws to scoop up mouthfuls of soft plants and algae. But as it turns out, Platybelodon may have been more of a saw tusker. So let's see, evidence from the tooth wear on these guys suggests that they were actually stripping bark away from trees with those tusks. And then up here on the top left, this is one species from the genus Dinotherium. This was a very widespread genus ranging from Africa to Europe to India. And all of the members of this genus had these really strange downward curving tusks that extend from the lower jaw. So they look like garden hose, hence the hoe tuskers. Then, of course, we have the mastodons and the mammoths. Okay, there's a mastodon, and mammoths right through here. Mastodons were shorter and stockier than mammoths, and they had smaller and straighter tusks. Mastodons and woolly mammoths both inhabited North America, but they had different niches. Mastodons were actually wood browsers, and their molars have these pointed cones, specially adapted for eating woody browse, while the mammoths were grazers. Their molars have flat surfaces for grinding up abrasive grasses. This guy's impressive. So populations of the steppe mammoth may have persisted in Mongolia as recently as 33,000 years ago. So the spiraled tusks on these males grew as long as 16 feet. All right, so this is heart-wrenching, but I need to cover it. So really going all the way back to the 1970s, killing elephants for their tusks, which you remember are just their incisors, has been just a huge issue. So long as there is a demand for elephant ivory, for their tusks to be carved and sold and displayed in places like China, Thailand, Vietnam, as well as the United States, this poaching, like you see here, it's going to continue. As you can see, it's disgustingly wasteful, as poachers will simply cut out the tusks and then just leave the rest of the carcass to rot. Older animals with larger tusks are more prized, so they're disproportionately targeted. And remember, when you pull out those old bulls and those wise matriarchs, you are losing their cultural knowledge from that herd. And there are far-reaching impacts on behavior, on genetics. We're actually selecting against individuals with large tusks. There are reproductive consequences, and then there are the socio-emotional health of these herds. So this first video that I'm going to ask you to watch is quite moving. So elephants are known to protect their dead from scavengers. And at the risk of anthropomorphizing them, they appear to mourn the loss of their loved ones. So take the 2 minutes and check out what I'm talking about. For savanna elephants, poaching for ivory is really concentrated in 2 problematic countries, Tanzania and Mozambique. Meanwhile, forested elephants, they have just been decimated in what's known as the Tri-Dom area, which includes parts of Gabon, Cameroon, and the Republic of Congo. Savanna elephants are considered threatened in some areas of their range, while forest elephants are critically endangered, as numbers have been dramatically reduced because of poaching and habitat loss. Asian elephants are also endangered because of fragmented, degraded habitat. You remember the comparison between the historic and current distributions that I showed you on that map at the beginning of this lecture. So again, given their slow doubling time, their slow population growth rate, recovery of these populations will take many decades, if not centuries, even if we are to completely stop the poaching. So how do we stop poaching? We need to stigmatize the purchase and display of ivory, much like dealing with the atrocity that is shark fin soup. We have to change human perceptions and ultimately human behaviors. So carved elephant ivory must not equate to power and prestige. So please take the less than 2 minutes and check out the embedded video, Why Elephants May Go Extinct in Your Lifetime. Hyraxes, sometimes called rock badgers, rock rabbits, or conies, comprise a single family, the Proboscidea, with 3 genera and 5 total species. But hyraxes are not badgers, nor are they rabbits. Taxonomists actually initially grouped hyraxes with the guinea pigs. Their family name means before the cavids. The cavids are the guinea pigs, but they're not closely related to guinea pigs either. Even their common name, hyrax, is a misnomer because that means the shrew mouse. None of these associations are accurate because based on the fossil and most importantly the molecular evidence, these hyracoids, believe it or not, are most closely related to elephants and manatees. So hyraxes are distributed in Central and Southern Africa, Algeria, Libya, Egypt, and parts of the Middle East, including Israel, Syria, and southern Saudi Arabia. The rock hyrax, this chunker that you see right here on the bottom left, this is the most widely distributed species, both geographically as well as altitudinally. They're going to occur in rocky outcrops from sea level all the way up to 4,200 meters, right? Which is over 12,000 feet. The yellow spotted hyrax here in the center, also called the bush hyrax, that's also found in similar rocky habitats. This species is in northeast all the way to southern Africa. And then these guys are really cool. On the far right, we have the southern tree hyrax. This is an arboreal tree hyrax species. The genus here is Dendrohyrax. All hyraxes are herbivorous and feed on a wide variety of vegetation like their elephant and manatee cousins. Grasses are going to make up a large part of the diet of the rock hyrax, like you see here. Their hypsodont dentition grinds that abrasive grass material. Other hyraxes have more brachiodont dentition because they're consuming less abrasive vegetation. Although hyraxes don't ruminate, they do have a unique digestive system involving one large cecum. Remember, the cecum is this pouch between the small and large intestines. And then they have an additional pair of ceca right here, right on either side of the ascending colon. And those are going to help the organism with the digestion of all of that plant material, that cellulose. Like elephants, hyraxes are social. Their colony sizes vary according to species, with the rock hyrax maintaining colonies of up to about 25 individuals, and the yellow-spotted hyrax up to 35. So you will recall the many eyes hypothesis, which says that living in a colony with many watchful eyes is going to reduce the amount of time that any one hyrax has to spend scanning for predators, freeing them up for more of their time budget to be spent foraging and finding mates. Another benefit of living in groups, especially if you're a small-bodied and poor thermoregulator like hyraxes, individuals in a colony are going to huddle together to conserve heat and maintain their body temperatures. And then one last point, turns out that hyraxes may be winners in the age of people, in the age of the Anthropocene. Mabisi in 2017 reported larger populations of hyraxes where there was higher human presence, possibly because of fewer natural predators around human establishments and more food availability. I mean, we do love our green lawns. This is phenomenal footage of hyraxes that are stretched out sunbathing and then sounding the alarm call in response to this dive bombing eagle that's using the glare of the sun to mask itself. But it turns out that these guys have an adaptation in their eyes that's going to reduce the glare from that high altitude sun. So take 2 minutes and check out this BBC Earth video. The order Sirenia includes 2 extant families. The family Dugongidae has 1 living species, the dugong, pictured here on the bottom left, as well as the massive but recently extinct Steller's sea cow, to which I'll return here in a moment. And then the family Trichichidae, which has 3 extant species of manatees, including the West Indian manatee. That's the species you're probably most familiar with if you've been to Florida. That's on the bottom right. There's also the Amazonian manatee and the West African manatee. The ordinal name Sirenia refers to the singing sirens of mythology. So dugongs and manatees may have been the basis for many of our mermaid myths. So morphologically, the West Indian manatee is longer, and it's twice as massive here at 1,200 pounds than the dugongs. Dugongs are relatively easy to identify. They have this muzzle that's going to flare outward, as you can see here. And then dugongs are also going to have these tail flukes, whereas the manatee has just the one large paddle-like tail. So here's a look at the distributions of these manatees. So here's our Steller's sea cow. It was over 10 feet long and weighed in excess of 20,000 pounds. So Steller sea cows were hunted into extinction in the Bering Sea in the mid-1700s. Amazingly, the Amazonian manatee here is found in the Amazon basin, this freshwater river basin, massive river. And then here's the West Indian manatee found in the Caribbean, including all around Florida. Like whales, Sirenians never leave the water. However, unlike whales, Sirenians are strictly herbivorous, and they represent the only mammalian marine herbivores. Another good question. So the Sirenians inhabit coastal areas, estuaries, bays, inland river systems, and tropical regions, where they feed on submerged vegetation like this seagrass. So Sirenian distribution is restricted to one, relatively shallow coastal areas because the plants that they depend upon need to photosynthesize, so they can't be too deep. Secondly, they need to be in tropical or subtropical regions with water temperatures at least 20 degrees centigrade, which is about 68 degrees Fahrenheit, because these manatees have very low metabolic rates. They live on nutrient-poor seagrass, and they're just not very good at thermoregulating. In fact, many manatees survive the Floridian cold by massing at these discharges, these warm water discharges from power plants in central and northern Florida. It's a great place to go and see manatees congregated during the winter. All 4 species of Sirenians are considered threatened by the IUCN, the International Union for the Conservation of Nature. Hines, 2005, reports that the greatest threat to dugongs in the Andaman Sea, that's the ocean that's along the western edge of Thailand and Malaysia, the greatest threat there is incidental catch, being entangled in fishing nets. Meanwhile, on the other side of the world, in Florida, being struck accidentally by boat propellers accounts for a significant proportion of manatee deaths. You can see the gruesome propeller scars here on this poor fella. So manatees are probably unable to detect and avoid oncoming boats because of poor hearing sensitivity at low frequencies and because of the speed of many of these boats. However, the biggest threat to Florida manatees may be the loss of seagrass habitat because of reduced water quality due to eutrophication. For your Module 3 current events connection, I would like for you to summarize this 5-minute National Public Radio podcast that describes the just incredible manatee die-off that was documented in 2021. As always, directions are on Canvas. And here is your handful of references. Next up, we will be discussing mammalian modes of feeding. So thank you so much for your time and stay well.